Are you looking for an experience that will grow your teenagers' faith, increase their leadership skills, and teach them the discernment to engage with the world all around them, all while taking them on the adventure of a lifetime? I mean, who isn't looking for that? If your teenager loves fun, adventure, and wants to grow in their faith and leadership this summer, then send them to Excel's Summer Leadership Camp. Excel's Summer Leadership Camp is a 12-day experience for passionate young leaders looking to discover God's truth, to discern wisely, and live wholeheartedly. Your teenager will embark on a transformative journey in the Blue Ridge Mountains, where they'll build lasting friendships in the context of community, embark on thrilling adventures like camping, rock climbing, whitewater rafting, and they will receive expert training and certifications in categories like CPR and wilderness first aid. Each aspect of the camp is woven together to help them learn to discover truth, to discern wisely, and take godly action in the context of real-life situations. To learn more or begin an application, go to theexcelcamp.org. That's theexcelcamp.org. Hurry, because summer is just around the corner.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Reclamation Podcast, where our goal is to help you reclaim good practices for faith and life. Today is episode 64 of the podcast, and I get to sit down with Calvin and Kyle, the hosts of the Underdog Podcast. These two athletes turned entrepreneurs turned podcasters have an incredible community that they're creating about what it means to be the underdog. That's right, the underdog. How to have a plan, how to work the plan, how to plan for the unexpected. They're building a community that's fueled by adversity, and they love to talk about what it means to overcoming the tough moments in life so that your story can continue to make you stronger and grow even in ways that you can't be expected. I love this conversation. Calvin and I actually went to school together way back in the day at Our Lady of Mercy, and I have loved watching him grow from there to Chaminade Julienne to Miami University, where he played football. So this is a great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. If you do enjoy it, the best compliment that you can give us is to leave a rating or review wherever it is you listen to podcasts, to maybe share it with a friend. And if you're ready to become part of the Reclamation community, then do me a favor. Text the word reclaim right now from your cell phone to 66866. Text the word reclaim to 66866. That way you can stay up to date on helpful tips, blogs, and all the things that are happening in the Reclamation community. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with the hosts of the Underdog Podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm excited today to introduce you to a brand new podcast with two dear guys, Calvin and Kyle, hosts of the Underdog Podcast. What's happening, guys?
What's going on, man? How we doing?
Really good. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be with you guys today. I've known Calvin. How many years have I known you, man?
So I believe you're a year older than me. We won't disclose our actual ages.
I'm 39. I'm old. I'm just embracing it.
I'm 38. And if we're accurate, I entered Our Lady of Mercy in the first grade, would have put you in the second grade. So
that's a long
we went through high school together as well.
Yeah.
So you guys are in that different bracket. See, I'm only 34, so you guys are in a bracket up, okay? So
he always does.
Well, who gets to decide where the brackets are?
The Kyle Decker rules. There you go.
So Kyle, now how long have you and Calvin known each other? Because that goes back a ways too.
Yeah, so we crossed paths in 2003 or 4 and at Miami University, and then we reunited after a couple years apart per se in 2010. So we've been really close since 2010 to now, so about 10 years.
I love it. And I love what you guys are trying to do, building community that's centered around the underdog. And your podcast cover art is a picture of you guys hand-drawn with your shirts being ripped open like the Superman emblem. And there they are, the underdogs. And so the first question I got to ask, Kyle, is what is the definition of an underdog?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for your time and having us on. It's a true honor. This is our first time. So, Tony, thank you so much for
you're welcome.
giving us this opportunity, because it's a little bit different to be on this side, to be honest with you. So,
well, it's a lot less control. It's a little bit more vulnerability.
Yeah, exactly. So really look forward to the conversation. But the premise behind the underdog, and by the way, that cover art definitely helps me out, makes me look a lot skinnier than I am. So
no judgment here. No judgment here. It's your cover art, man. I'd say use whatever you want.
Exactly. But we really felt strongly, myself, and then, speaking with Calvin about, kind of the things that, we've overcome adversity to sustain success in our lives. And we wanted to hopefully share a positive platform to others. And we felt like the Underdog was an appropriate approach, with both of us coming from a athletic background and really just passionate about, we're in the staffing business and we work with people every day. And we really want to provide, there's so much negativity in the world. How do we provide a positive movement? And we felt like that Underdog and that dog emblem really, really represents Calvin and I well, and what we're trying to accomplish.
I love that. Calvin, I'm anxious, and Kyle, I'm going to ask you next, so be ready. What's your Underdog story, Calvin?
So I would say it goes back to when I was 8 years old, really losing my father kind of unexpectedly in the second grade. And, just being raised by my mother, she did a tremendous job.
Your mother's an amazing woman, P.S. I just think we all need to just acknowledge that, the saint in the room.
Exactly. Mama Blackman is the best.
Yeah. No, she is. She, she's. I hear that from a lot of people. Just that I've heard that for my entire life. She can crack the whip, but she's just a very, very, just a motherly figure. Just truly has always embraced my friends and family and whatnot. And she is like the queen of the family. Everything goes through her. So yeah, I appreciate you guys saying that. And so, my story has really been kind of the underdog growing up without a father, as many people have grown up without a parent, and whatnot. But for me, I think once I got to high school, trying to find my identity and not knowing what I was going to do once I left college or once I left high school, and was fortunate enough to pick up a football in my junior year of high school. And then, by my senior year was getting opportunities to scholarship offers to go play at the next level, and was fortunate and blessed to get an opportunity to go to Miami University and form friendships and relationships that, carry over to this day. And then if you kind of fast forward even further, I ended up having a seizure in 2011, which was or 2012, which was kind of unexpected. I've never suffered from seizures or anything, and haven't thankfully had any since. But it was a state in my life where just trying to figure out what I was going to do, as a lot of people do. I was in my mid-20s, late 20s or whatnot, and was trying to figure out where my life was going and what that passion was going to be. Had coached a little bit, had worked in, the corporate world. And so that's really kind of where Kyle came in and really, brought me and let me stay at his house for about 2 or 3 weeks, during that time when I was not able to drive after the seizure. So that really formed our friendship even more deeper while we were still coaching together at one of the local high schools. And so then fast forward 2017, I think I'm really answering your question way deeper than what you wanted, but going into kind of the trajectory of how this has started. But fast forward 2017, he knew that I was still kind of in that struggle mode. I was on my way to get married. We had just had our first kid and was still trying to find my identity. And, he offered me an opportunity to come work here at the job center. And it's been a blessing ever since. And so that's kind of where we are. My guy.
I love it. No, I love it. It's a real story. And it's got lots of twists and turns. Kyle, what about you? What's your underdog story, man?
I don't know how I can follow that up. I mean, that was about the best I've heard him say that, but I'm really appreciative. And Calvin's came in. I know he talks a lot about me, but he's been just as instrumental in developing me in different ways and opening my eyes to just nuances that I don't really see, some blind spots like my health, for instance. And, he's really put a premise on, I was growing the business so much and really, bringing this podcast, bringing in health, and we work out together, just a lot of things like that. So I just want to say, how instrumental he is there as well. But my quick story, I'll try to be a little bit quicker than my man here. My parents grew up on a farm. Actually, my grandpa to this day is almost 88 and still farming. Blue collar background by my parents, super, had a great traditional, really supportive parents growing up. But I always wanted to play Division I football. I never was offered a scholarship. I followed my passion with the support of my parents, went to Miami, walked on, earned a scholarship. They always said I was too small, too skinny, and moving 6 times in the first 16 years of my life, I always had to overcome and reestablish myself. And I always kind of carried that chip on my shoulder. I was never good enough to be there. And I wanted to prove people that, I was an underdog and could play, and earned a scholarship there. And vice versa, same thing. Started a startup business in 2009, staffing business. Was told it was a bad decision, and by people that were around me, and which I trusted, but they gave me true advice, and I still believed in myself and followed my vision and process. And fast forward, and we're in 8 states and employ up to 17,000 people, and truly blessed to work with great people like Calvin and get to meet folks like you, Tony.
You guys have an incredible story, and there's so many things that intertwine. One of the things that really jumped out to me as I was kind of listening to your guys' story is this kind of goal of being a scholarship athlete. So I guess one of the questions I want to ask, we'll start with you, Kyle, is what does having a defined objective like being a scholarship athlete do for your underdog mentality?
That's a great question. And I laugh when people say it's a great question, but it is a great question. The reason why I say that, there's a lot of, I've started studying, and we actually interviewed someone on our podcast, Gary Brackett, someone of like JJ Watt. Those are all walk-ons that had to earn a scholarship. And even when we talked to Urban Meyer, he talked about a lot about his walk-ons, like Nate Ebner, who plays for the Patriots, how instrumental going from a walk-on to a scholarship. And just being going into football, there's 105 guys and 85 guys have scholarships, and being one of those 20 guys that don't, you want that, you want to be just like any other guy on the team that has a scholarship and be valued by the coaches and, your teammates and the school and really your peers to say, hey, I'm just as hardworking, competitive. I can add value to the team. And that to me was my goal. And my goal was to walk on at a Division I program and actually play at Ohio State. And the funny thing is, the first game I was a backup quarterback and a holder. And the first game I went out was actually at Ohio Stadium against Ohio State. And it was a dream come true with all my family there. It was pretty cool. We didn't get into like the fourth quarter because we were getting beat, but I got in and got down for an extra point. And it was really special.
That's awesome. Calvin, I know a little bit more of your story. What caused you to pick up a football your junior year? Because up to that point, you didn't play any of those sports. You didn't really play football at all. And then you picked up the football. And then what kind of sent you on the trajectory to say, hey, I want to do this in college as a scholarship athlete? Tell me about that mindset.
So I never had that mindset that I wanted to play college football. My junior year was the summer before my junior year, and a friend of mine was on it. I called him just to see what he was doing, and he was headed to practice. And I said, I think I'm going to come with you. And he was like, I'll pick you up. So I went and asked my mom, and she was against it.
Wait, who is the friend? I know all your friends.
Tierre Fields.
Okay. All right. Good.
Yeah. Yep. So I went back there. I'll never forget. She was laying in the bed, middle of the afternoon in the middle of summer, and she's like, "Why don't you just go back to playing baseball or something?" And I was like, "No, like I'm gonna give this a shot." She's like, "All right." So I remember going down and showing up, and all the guys were like, "What are you doing here? I'm a junior, about to be a junior. All the upperclassmen are laughing. What are you doing here?" It's like, you know what? Like, I'm just gonna figure this thing out. I dropped 9 passes in a game my junior year, a JV game. Mind you, JV plays at 3:00, on a Thursday. So varsity's practicing. All my friends are juniors and seniors playing varsity. So we get back from the game, varsity practice is ending, and they're like, the word gets out that I dropped 9 passes. So like, I just go in the tank. Like, I don't know if this is for me. Fast forward to the summer before my senior year, I just remember my coach was like, "You're going to be my starting guy next year." I'm like, you seen me play? Like, I'm all right. But he gave me an opportunity. And from the very first game, I scored 2 touchdowns against Northmont. And from there, like, it just started to go. But this entire time, my senior year, not one thought about playing college football crossed my mind. It wasn't until we lost the state semi game, I was sitting in the locker room crying, and my quarterback coach walks in. He goes, "I'm going to enjoy watching you play next year on Saturdays." And I was like, "Huh?" He's like, "Some schools have called." And I was like, "Huh?" But I still didn't think anything of it. And once the season ended, obviously some opportunities came in, and I made the decision to go to Miami University, and from there, the rest was history.
That's pretty incredible stories from both of you guys. And I think one of the interesting things is how much you both have faced adversity in various forms. And I'm not even sure if you can be an underdog without adversity, but even today, as you guys are kind of going through the rhythms of life, what mindset do you take when you come up against something that, Kyle, for example, that somebody says you can't start a business, or Calvin, somebody says you can't do this or can't do that. Take us through the physical process. I think there are a lot of people who struggle against adversity and would love to learn how to do it better. If they were sitting in front of you, how would you say to handle adversity in a more productive way? Kyle?
I think first you got to, utilize, at least I did, my recommendation to anyone that's listening to overcome adversity is, listen. I think you actually listen to it and it fuels me. A lot of people can differentiate on that type of mentality as believing in it or not. But like for me, it's always fueled me. I've always used some of that negativity or someone's negative energy on me in a positive manner. And meaning that I believe, like I mentioned, I wanted to play Division I football, and I visualized it and I just attacked it and I had a plan, right? I executed it. So I think having a vision and believing in the process to get there and just sticking to that and working through any point. Because a lot of people quit, right? It's easier fight or flight. A lot of people, it's a lot easier to fly away. It's a lot of walk away from something, but to stick to it and work through any of those problems and talk through it. You got to have great people around you, right? You got to circle yourself with people that, want to do great things. So I think, having a great set of friends or mentors or peers is critical, because you need to have that support as you go through adversity. But then just have that plan, as our old coach, Coach Hepner, have a plan, work the plan for the unexpected. We still stick to that to this day. And that was very fortunate that he taught us that. And that was part of kind of my growth from college to the career, and then vice versa in childhood. Like I said, my parents, said, when you're going to do something, you're going to see it through. And I think that really helped me. And that means something, your word and commitment. And I committed to playing Division I football. I committed to making the job center successful. And for me, no matter what was going to happen, I wasn't going to be stopped.
Oh, that's a great answer. Calvin, what about you? What do you do when you run up against adversity?
For me, I feel like the phrase a lot of times you hear people say, I'm just a very, very competitive person, is thrown around kind of loosely. But for me, I think I love a challenge. So, and I think it goes back to also surrounding yourself with the right mind, with like-minded people, or people who, are going to gravitate towards some of the same things. So I'll use, right now we're in the middle of this pandemic or whatnot. And one thing I know Kyle and I challenge each other with, as he touched on earlier, is working out. And, we're getting up every single morning throughout the week at 5:45 to go work out. And to not to say that that's adversity, but knowing that when an adverse moment comes up, like the challenge of how are we going to respond to this, finding the positive in it, and then attacking it full steam. And no single person in the history of the world has ever overcome adversity by themselves. So if you have the right people in your corner to help you overcome that adversity and not only have your back, but challenge you, you know what I mean? Like, he gets on me. Yeah, we work together and we're really good friends, but he got on me last week about something. And I took it as a challenge. Okay, like, this is what he sees. How do I go now and better myself? And vice versa. I know he wants me to do the same thing to him. So I feel like whenever there's an adverse moment, you have to figure out, what's the good that can come from it? And then how are you going to attack it and hopefully enjoy the process of overcoming it.
Yeah, one of the interesting things is that you guys are friends and colleagues. Kyle, obviously you've birthed this business from your passion and desire, and Calvin, you've been a key part of that process along the way. What's it like to work together, podcast together, and work out together? Is it ever too much together time?
I don't think we've ever, I'm sure I'll be interesting to see what he has to say here. I know I'll be honest, and I'll say this about my wife and Calvin, who's probably around me just as much as she is at times, because we work together and we're together all the time. I can be ultra competitive. And as he said, I think the expectations I try to hold myself and him and others to is at a very high standard. I think we all do that to each other. So I think at times, I'm sure I can be a lot to handle because of some of that expectation for each other. And we like to call each other out. And there's times that we have to work through some of that, but we have that respect. We know we love each other at the end of the day. And there's a true, genuine passion for the human being element. So like I said, we work together, we work out together, we have the podcast. And at the end of the day, we know that we're trying to impact and make this world a better place. And, we're going to have our differences. We're going to have our arguments. But at the end of the day, I think we can look at each other and hug each other or, dap it up or, pound it out or whatever we need to do, we'll get through it.
Quick question. Do you know your Enneagram number? Is that something that you guys have studied?
I have not.
I do not know.
Okay. Now, the Enneagram is 9 different lenses in which you look at, see the world, and you typically identify with a certain number. So I identify as an 8 on the Enneagram, the Challenger, and there's all these different lenses, and it's become pretty popular in the Christian circles and kind of in popular circles. So I was just curious if you had seen the numbers. It's kind of like Strength Finders or Myers-Briggs, that kind of jazz. So I was just kind of curious what your numbers were to see if they were how well they intersected. I imagine they do intersect fairly well. Calvin, what about you? How is it having this guy around all the time?
I mean,
come on, just shoot it straight here. We can lay it out there.
What friends?
Podcast therapy, guys. Podcast therapy.
Yeah, this is good, Tony. This is developing our relationship even further.
No doubt. What friends? I would say what teammates? Don't get into it to some level. But at the same time, I think that is what strengthens the relationship. Are we around each other a lot? Yes. At the same time, I'll kind of go a different angle than what he went. We both have young kids and family at home. So yes, 5 years ago, before we had kids, we hung out a lot outside of work. That doesn't happen nearly as much now. And it's only because of the nature of what's happened and the trajectory that our lives are on. So I think too, it's not like I sit back and I'm like, man, I haven't seen or talked. I can go 2 weeks and not talk to him. Not anymore because we're in the podcast. But before, even when I was working here, I may go 2 weeks and not talk to him, where some people may think, oh, he's upset. I'm like, no, we got lives. He's got a lot going on. I got a lot going on. And I think we've just learned to balance that to the best we can. And again, I think we feed off of one another because he obviously knows I have his best interest at heart for not only this business, but for the podcast and then for his health and my health. So I think at the end of the day, we know we both want the same end goal. And so, we're able to make that work. So that'd be my answer. Hopefully it was a good one.
So one of the clear common denominators in both of your story is this need and sense of community. Calvin, one of the things that you said was that you can't face adversity alone. So I guess one of the questions that I have for you is, when did you realize in your life that you need community, and who or where was that community for you?
I think you're on mute.
Workday starting to sound the same?
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. Finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
I don't know if there's a clear time that I realized it, but I would say probably 2 phases. One, I think when, I did have my seizure, Kyle was somebody who was there for me. And my mom made a comment that you need friends like that. I think that's one clear defined time. And then I would say 2, probably when I really got into listening to podcasts and started understanding what the term personal or self-development meant. I think that's something where I started to really step back and really understand, what does that mean and how does that relate to the people that I have relationships with. And, you know, you hear people say, I think I've heard it on Ryan's podcast, you're the average of your 5 closest friends. And so surrounding yourself again with those type of people and trying to, you know, elevate yourself to those top 2 friends. And then, you know, obviously trying to pull those 2 friends that would maybe be below you up to your level or to a higher level. So I think it's just kind of been an overall just understanding of what personal development is for me, and knowing that with a community, you're able to really get that message out and also intake a lot of those different, you know, things that would come from having a community around.
Kyle, that's an interesting question for you because as you mentioned in your story, there was so much moving around earlier on in your life. And so I have to imagine part of the thought process for you is this not getting too attached. So when did you decide that you needed to attach? And was there a specific person or place or incident that was a catalyst for that?
Yeah, that's a great point, Tony, and rightfully so. I think each time I moved, I realized how important it was to find people you can trust and gain relationships to help you through. Because each spot, as we mentioned earlier, you know, each time you have adversity, you need that group of friends. And it was hard. I'll be honest with you. I mean, there was times where I knew my dad was, you know, coming to the dinner table and he asked to have a conversation. We're like, oh, we're moving again.
Oh, man.
And you do, to your point, Tony, you do have a little bit of, you know, insecurity about, you know, relationships because, hey, it's just going to move on. It's going to move on and just living that kind of transient moving style from place to place. But, you know, really once I got to, I'd say the middle school age and whatnot, I was able to establish long-term relationships. Even when I moved, I maintained those relationships, and those are relationships still to this day that I have really, really good friends and connections. And I have a passion to develop that long-term bond and really to have long-distance relationships with people as well.
So one of the things that I appreciate about what you guys are doing in your podcast is you really are trying to create a sense of community. One of the questions I have about being an underdog and just that mindset goes back to a speech that you guys probably both know because you're sports guys. And do you guys remember Michael Jordan's Hall of Fame acceptance speech?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
It's a disaster, right? And if you've never seen it, if you're listening and you've never seen it, I recommend going back and looking at it. Because one of the things, it feels like it's full of venom. And so as we think about underdogs, one of the questions I have is there ever a time when it's no longer helpful to be the underdog? I mean, obviously at the end of his career, Jordan was not the underdog, despite what he chose to use as motivations. Where's the balance in that? And how do you guys live in that tension?
I think you see, and I think with the Last Dance going on and watching Michael Jordan's career back again and watching anyone, whether if it's in sports or it's in business, I think something I have after listening to Ryan's podcast of JJ Redick, you've never arrived, you're always becoming. And for me, I always kind of have that underdog, you know, adversity. I guess maybe underdog's not always the case every single day, but the adverse point where I'm always personally, I don't think I speak upon myself, is always having some sort of adversity that I have to overcome. And I think always believing in working and taking each day as a blessing and not take it for granted and making the most of it and maxing it out and winning that day. You know, you're going to face adversity throughout that day. At least I do. And that's my belief. And I think, you know, that's how I kind of approach each and every day. And oftentimes in the interviews we have, Tony, it's people that have had multiple plane crashes and very tragic events. So really each day, you know, keeping that faith and keeping that belief of maxing out that day and overcoming adversity is how I kind of approach each day.
So let me follow up to that. How do you not let the adversity stick to you? And I mean, obviously you have a young family. How do you learn to let it go?
I think being self-aware here and transparent, it's hard. You know, I think that's the first thing is to look yourself in the eye and understand that it's hard to not, as you're saying, it's hard to not let it stick to you. some mechanisms, self-talk is something I think is, getting back to understanding the event happened. What is my response so I can have the most positive outcome? We talk about all the time, the E plus R equals O.
Yeah.
So the adverse point hits, that's the event, how we respond, right? Control what you can control. And I think that's a main thing is what I've really tried to embrace is, how do I control my response? What happened to me, that adverse point? How do not let it stick to me? And how do I respond so I can get that adversity off of me? And I think there's not a perfect formula. And I think if everyone says that they can just let it go, I would love to hear, I would love to hear from that person, but that's how I do it.
Calvin, what about you, man? Is there ever a thought that maybe the underdog mentality goes too far?
No, for me. So the way I approach it is, everyone in this world is going through adversity. You never know what someone's going through. So for me, when I do face adversity, or, when there's those sticking points, I try to step back. And I heard this at I think it was my grandmother's funeral, probably 20 years ago. And he said, no matter how bad you think you've got it, someone else has it worse. So I always just go back to that phrase of, whatever I'm going through, I have to still be blessed and thankful for what I have. So, and nothing lasts forever either. You know what I mean? So God's going to bring you through if he brings you to it, he's going to bring you through it, So for me, I think it's a matter of just, again, being self-aware, as Kyle said, and understanding that it's not about me, now having kids and having a wife, it's about them, and for everyone else, it's like, I can walk by somebody out here in the hallway and I have no clue what they're going through, but I have to be self-aware enough to know that I'm not going to stop. And, when you're telling someone what is the other phrase you tell someone, when someone asks you how you're doing, the phrase is they don't care because, they've got problems too, or however the term goes, you know what I mean? So I just always just say, hey, what I'm going through is what I'm going through. And I've got to figure it out, hopefully with the people around me, because other people are going through the same thing and more. And again, just be thankful for what I have. And at the end of the day, hopefully that'll bring me through.
How do you not let adversity stick to you? We heard a little bit from Kyle's thoughts process on it, but what's yours?
I think it's about, again, just personal development, of just using those past experiences, again, knowing that I've had adversity come up, and I'm going to be able to get through it. That some adverse moments are going to be much bigger than other adverse moments. Adversity is anything. Adversity is forgetting your wallet at home when you're on your way to the office and you got to turn around. Adversity is,
and that happens a lot, by the way.
He's trying to say I'm late all the time, but that's not true. Or adversity is, losing a family member or something, you know what I mean? So adversity is at different levels. And I just think, again, just taking time to continually, hopefully, develop yourself as a person, and just knowing that when those adverse moments come up, how are you going to be able to get through them? Because again, adversity doesn't last forever. So you can't let it stick to you, because it's going to pass like everything else.
Now, one of the things you guys have both mentioned is that you're young dads. How old are your kids?
So mine I have a son, Riley, who's 4, and Crosley, who's 1.5.
His 4-year-old son looks like he's 9. Dude is huge.
His dad played quarterback. He's gonna be starting left tackle.
So you said 4 and 9,
or 4 and 1, 4 and
1. I'm sorry, 4 and 1. He looks like he's 9. Yeah, my bad. Calvin, how old's yours?
My daughter's 4 and my son is 3. They're 14 months apart. Don't recommend it.
4. So I'm in a way different game than you guys are, because I've got a 14-year-old, an almost 10-year-old, and a 8-year-old. So one of the questions I always love to ask newer dads, and I think it's a conversation that dads don't get into enough, is what we're learning from our kids. So Kyle, what has being a dad taught you about life?
Yeah, another great question. Honestly, I listened to one of your podcasts, Natalie and Katie. Is that right?
Yeah, the Mom's Life podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great episode, by the way.
Thank you.
About the mom. So I'm gonna try to represent the dads here. So, I I guess fatherhood was a blessing for me. I was so focused on the upstart of the company and living it 24/7. And I would say it was such a humbling experience to see someone you helped. I partnered with my wife, Kristen, who's a blessing for me as well. And just to see you're now in charge of more, as Calvin mentioned, just than yourself, right? You have your wife and then my first son and my second son. And really that's part of my why. And that changed, right? I'll be honest. At times I was selfish. It was all about the business and it was all about, just focusing on me as an individual, and then getting married and then having kids. And it's tough. I had to go through that transition of early fatherhood and, being up all night and changing diapers. And a lot of my close friends and even Calvin talk about fatherhood is not as, I think sometimes people talk about it as being this, I always say peaches and cherries. I don't even know if that's the right saying, but it's like this kosher thing that's just, one step, two step, three step. It's a whole different ball game. And I've learned a lot, and I've learned a lot of hard lessons. But I guess to conclude in a long-term answer here, it's been a blessing, and it's my new why. I want to do whatever I can do to give them what they deserve.
Oh, that's great. Calvin, what about you, man?
So I'm actually reading a book. That's why I just picked up my phone. It's called Raising Men. It's by former Navy SEAL Eric Davis, and he talks about the correlation between being a Navy SEAL and then raising obviously a son. But I have a son and a daughter, so I obviously related to both of them. But I would say one thing as of recent that I've noticed is I'm a very patient person, but it's taught me even more patience. And I have to constantly remind myself that kids are still trying to figure the world. They're just trying to figure the world out. That's all they're trying to do. But on the flip side, as adults, we're still trying to figure the world out too.
Amen. That'll preach.
This figured out. You know what I mean? So for me, like last night, I got frustrated with my son because he was whining, not wanting to go to bed. And I got frustrated, and all he wanted was his mom. So she comes in and we're going back and forth. I tapped him on his butt, but I literally have been telling myself, like, that's probably not the solution. Yes, my kids are going to get spankings. I believe in that. But at the same time, he's 3 years old. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
Let's take a step back. You know what I mean? The kid just wants to go to bed. And all he's asking me to do is sit in the rocking chair while he falls asleep in his bed. And as they say, like, cherish these moments because they're not going to be there forever. So for me, it's just taking a step back. What do I need to go out and do? Why can't I sit in the chair for an extra 10 minutes till he falls asleep? Because I want to get out and go do something else around the house. Like, cherish those moments. So I would say those are some of the things that I'm really trying to step back and just say, you know what? Take all this in, because it's going to be over. There's going to be a time where he's not going to want me to sit in his room. He's going to be like, Dad, where are the car keys? I'm out. I'm like, oh, that happened. So as you're approaching.
I mean, my son now we're talking about freshman football next year.
That's
like I'm just not even ready.
That's it's hard to even, it seems so far away, but it's probably pretty quick, huh?
Yeah. The days are long and the years are short.
Yeah.
And that's been really true of my parenting journey, is like, man, that's just like from 1 to 3 was quick. And now I'm raising a man. And so we're trying to do our best there. Well,
so let me flip switch. This is a little different. I kind of wish our guests would do this to us. What would you recommend to young fathers like ourselves? You've obviously raised a great family. What could you give us as knowledge nuggets?
The things that frustrate you most in your children are the character deficiencies you see in yourself. And so if you're frustrated with your son's or daughter's needs, I would challenge you to spend some time in that as a dad. The other thing is nothing replaces time given, right? Like it's quality time too, not quantity time. And so, showing up and being present in your kid's life is the best gift you're going to ever give them. I think those are the things that I'm learning. When my son turned 13, we gave him we called it a yes weekend. And it was his becoming a man weekend. And so he turns his birthday's in February, and so we went skiing for the weekend, and we stayed in a hotel, and I let him pick all the restaurants and everything else. But the real gift of the weekend is that, and I stole this idea from a woman writer, Jen Hatmaker. We had all the men in the family write him a note about what it means to be a man. And so I gave those to him along the course of the weekend. But that time with him, that weekend with him, like just cut out my heart and just leave it there, because that's what happened. And I just think a lot of dads get so busy providing for our family and what we think they need, we don't actually give them what they really want and need.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate that.
So back to you guys. Who flipped the interview here? Jeez, what is happening?
That was me.
Yeah, nice. That's a judo
it.
flip. I like it. You're never not going to get me to talk. That's the problem. Okay, so you're 30 some odd episodes in to the Underdog Podcast. You've probably got countless more recorded because you guys are always ahead of the game. Let me ask you this: a year from now, what are we celebrating about what God is doing through this platform for you guys?
I think I'll answer first. I think for me, I'm still waiting to hear. We're starting to get it now, but hearing how this has affected, at least one person or multiple people's lives, right? So maybe they were going through depression, anxiety, career change, or anything, they were lost. And if we can help someone through that point of adversity because of what we either said or really our platform that we've been blessed and able to do, that for me would be my celebration. Because I know, we're going to stick to our process, right? We had great mentorship. We're meeting folks like yourself and other podcasters that are committed to providing positive content on a consistent basis. I know we're going to do that. My affirmation of what we're doing, I want to hopefully hear a success story of hopefully at least one individual, if not multiple, and how we've helped them.
I love that. Calvin, what about you, man?
I would say we'll be celebrating, to his point, probably from a broader perspective, would be a true community that we're building. I think those stories and relationships are. I want zero credit for the Underdog Podcast. It's just how I've always been, in sports. It's a team game. You know what I mean? And I think when we hear from someone, like he said, you hear that one story or you start hearing, what it's done for someone, I think that's when you start to really see the return on investment, and you're able to say, okay, like now what? How do we build off of that? So I think as you start to build that community, you start to see and start to hear those types of, stories or comments and whatnot. And it's great to have someone come up to you and say, hey, I listened to your episode. As like it just puts a smile on your face. Like, wow, you actually listened to me. I appreciate you taking 45 minutes out of your day to listen to me. And then the craziest thing is they tell you, I really like this episode, the one that you hated the most. And you're like, wow. So it's like, that people are getting something from it that you probably overlook or don't assume. So I think we'll be celebrating, just the continual growth of a community where, hopefully as we're able to continue to give those knowledge nuggets. And we're also able to take away from what they're telling us that they took away from it. And we can continue to provide more and even better content. So
that's phenomenal. So, if somebody wants to become part of the Underdog community, where is the best place for them to start? Where can they find you guys on the interwebs?
Yeah, so we have we're on all the different social platforms. So Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and we're working on all those platforms. We're trying to get everything up and rolling. We're have a website. You can obviously find us on any. Whether it's iTunes, Apple Podcasts, anything really. Spotify. Thank you. See, that's why we're good partners. He's helping me out here.
No, I love that.
Yeah, so we're pretty much on any platform you can find the Underdog or put in Kyle or Calvin, and we should hopefully be populated up there. So
That's great. Well, and we'll link to all that in the show notes. So be sure to check that out. Also, for those of you that are listening and you might be wondering who the Ryan is, that's Ryan Hawk of the Learning Leader podcast. We'll link to that in the show notes as well. He's been a great mentor to all of us in this podcasting process. And you guys all played football together in Miami and around the same time, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually Calvin and Ryan played together, and like you said, a great shout out to him. I know, Tony, he's helped you, and for us, he's really set that standard, right? We're all trying to aspire to provide really, really good positive content. And I love what you're doing, by the way. I mean, I know I'm trying not to hijack it because I can get long-winded. Part of one of the things he told me, Kyle, you need to listen more than you talk. So I'm on the other side of the fence here, but what you're doing, what he's doing, and what we're all trying to accomplish is, I think, a great blessing. And it's not for the dollars and the cents, right?
Right.
If it was for that, then we wouldn't be doing it. And I think, hopefully people understand that. I don't think people all do. Like, oh, you guys are making all this money. And then like, no, we're not. And we're doing it to help others. Right.
Yeah.
And we try to keep it simple and try to make a positive impact.
I really appreciate you guys. The last question I always love to ask my guests, and it's an advice question. And I'm actually going to take you guys back to the experience that you guys have shared, but at different times together. And that is your very first football practice. You're walking on at Miami University. You're all geared up and you're walking out to the practice field, whatever that looks like. If you could go back and you could give your younger self one piece of advice, Calvin, we'll kick off with you. What would you say to yourself?
Put in the work. I mean, for me, it's easy. I didn't play nearly as much as I wanted, and, one thing I was told when I first got to Miami, everyone was good in high school. Everyone out on this field was good in high school. So for me, I think it would be put in the work, and that's the work off of the field. That's the work in the classroom. That's the practice. That's, I knew nothing about. I'm baffled now when I hear 20-year-olds who talk about personal development and different things, because that's not something that I was into other things. We won't go down that path,
That's a whole different podcast, brother.
Whole nother podcast. So I think for me, it would just be put in the work and the focus and just really and love what you do. Again, I think the way it kind of hit me and the way it came out of nowhere, I was just green. I knew nothing, so it'd be awesome to go back and say, this is what I would do differently. So, but I can't.
Kyle, what about you, man?
I would say, I started off as a walk-on, earned a scholarship. So I obviously did some things to earn, but I think to Calvin's point, the temptations of the social scene back then, I wish, I enjoyed my uptown experience in Oxford. Those that have never been there, it's a good spot to be if that's what you're looking to do as well. Obviously, great education, great academics, athletics. But I think for me, I did get caught up and got distracted with some of those temptations. And if I could go back, I would have, really, really probably would have committed more to my craft of trying to be the best teammate and quarterback I could be. And at times, I was probably should have been in the film room, and I was, uptown. So, those are things I kind of look back, and if I had advised any young athlete coming up through, you have the rest of the life if that's what you choose to do things. And not that I recommend that, because I definitely advise against it, but take advantage of that opportunity. And I think I could have maxed it out a lot better than I did.
And I'll add to that too. Like, you can, even the guys, obviously I'm still friends with a lot of those guys, but I know now why some of my friends were, one, yeah, they had talent, but two, I can identify the guys who put in the work, you know what I mean? And it shows, because now they're putting in the work in the business world. So they had that mentality when they arrived, you know what I mean? It's transitioned over into the business world. So it's very evident and clear to see the guys who were focused and why they had the success that they did. So that's what I would say there.
So good, guys, and so applicable to everybody, no matter where they are on their journey today. Thank you guys so much for the time today and being so generous. And I just truly appreciate what you guys are doing in the community. And I'm a proud member of the Underdog community and can't wait to see what God does with your guys' platform.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you, Tony, so much.
Thanks for having us on, man.
I told you, what a great episode. I love their approach to overcoming adversity and what a lesson failure can be, and how to provide and stay in a positive attitude despite the things that come against you on a day-to-day basis. Our goal with this podcast has always been about reclaiming good practices for faith and life. You hear me say it every single episode. This is one of those moments that it's a life mentality type of episode. And if you lean in to what these guys are talking about in the Underdog community, I know you're going to do things that you couldn't otherwise do on your own. So I'm thankful for them. I'm thankful for their gift. And hey, go subscribe to their podcast. It's they're putting out some great episodes. One I know is coming up, Urban Meyer, who I'm excited to hear about. They just had Merle Hodge on, so you're not going to want to miss it. As always, the best compliment you can give us, leave a rating review, share the podcast with maybe somebody who's never heard it before, get the word out about what God is doing through this platform. And don't forget, text the word reclaim to 66866 to be a part of our community. Thank you guys so much. I look forward to continuing to walk with you as we reclaim good practices for faith and life.